Okay, in this video, I'll be going over how to shade a cone. So I want you to think about birthday hats, upside down ice cream cones, traffic cones, that sort of thing. It is a rounded object with a point at the top, essentially. Now, in order to draw this cone, I'll be using just a regular pencil. I'll be using my stump or blending stick, or my finger, or a tissue for blending, and an eraser, of course. Okay, so the trick with a cone is that it's a rounded object, right? So you don't want to draw it flat on the bottom. So what I want to do is I'm going to start. There's a couple different ways to draw it, but I always find a strong way to do it is start with a straight line, really light, down the middle, and then a line going across, almost like an upside down T. Now you want each side, each line on either side of this central line to be about the same width. Okay, so from there, at the top, I'm going to draw a straight line down to meet it on both sides. Okay, so essentially I drew a triangle. To make it look like a cone, we have to think about the previous video regarding the cylinder. It's rounded, right? So in order to make it look three-dimensional, we have to think about it rounded as well. So it's on a table, but just to kind of show you what the ellipses would look like, I'm going to start here, and you want it to be pretty much similar on top and bottom, and I'm curving the bottom here. So this outline shape will be my cone. So let me just outline that a little bit darker. Everything else was just guidelines. I'm going to erase them now. So again, just to show you a couple of things, if you don't round it, you get a triangle. If you round it too much, it looks like something that might wobble and fall over. So you want to think about that as you're drawing it. Okay, so in the cylinder, if you remember from the previous video, I kind of broke it down into sections using my value scale as a guide from light to dark, and just kind of figuring out what should go where. We're going to do something similar with this cone, but instead of having lines straight across, we're going to have lines stemming from a central point and ending at the bottom here. Again, these are guidelines. I'm going to draw them super light, and I suggest you do the same. So let's go across this curved line at the bottom here. If I just kind of mark off every, equidistant, every, half an inch or something like that, each one of these points are going to meet this central point. All right, so I'm going to lightly draw that here. It's almost like a fan or a windshield wiper, right? So each tone is going to stem from the central point at the top and sort of go left to right in this fashion, right? So just like in the other videos, I'm going to have my light source hitting the highlight here, right? So my light source, my highlight's going to be this band here. I'm going to have my half tones in the middle, right? So I have my half tones about here. My core shadow will be in this vicinity. And what I mean the whole entire strip. And my cast shadow, which is going to come out this way. We'll get to the cast shadow later. All right, so knowing this, let's start shading. So I'm going to start again with the darkest stuff here. So I'm going to start on this side here, and I'm pressing pretty dark across this whole entire band, right? So each band of this should get a little bit lighter, right? So I'm going to start here, get a little bit lighter up to there. Again, I'm just pressing a little bit lighter as I go across. Important to draw your, if you are starting with these guidelines, draw them as light as you possibly can, because you really don't want to see them at the very end. Right, so now I'm going to start thickening up my shadows, or my shading rather. So it's stemming from the middle. Again, if you wanted to go left to right, you can do that too, but just remember that it's darker on the left side and it fades to right. That's pretty good. Let me start blending it. So I'll use my blending stump or blending stick. And just like before, if you're using a blending stick or if you're using your finger or a tissue, chances are you're going to blend outside the lines a little bit, and you're also going to blend some of these tones together so it looks a little bit too monotonous or too monotone. Well, that's what your eraser's for. So I'm going to come back in. I'm going to bring back that highlight and a little bit from the edge and just kind of bring that down. Make it a little bit thicker at the bottom, thinner on top. Sometimes your regular eraser works pretty good for little fixes like this. Okay, I'm gonna go over it one more time just to kind of really work on darkening up these tones. I want my 7 to be triangular shape here. Come to a point. And there you go. So like I said before, my half tones are sort of in this area here. My light source is coming here. My core shadow is this whole section here. Each section is almost like a triangle, like a little tiny triangle, right? So that is one triangle, that is one triangle, that is one triangle, and so on and so forth. Now, let's work on the shadow coming off the object. Just like in each other video, the light source is coming from the top right. If you go across, you'll see the shadow should be coming out of the bottom left. And I'm going to start as far as I can on this rounded edge, and I'm bringing the line almost like an elongated triangle itself. And again, the cast shadow here is going to be darkest where it meets the object. So I'm going to make it really dark here. And I'm going to fade it to light as I go closer to the bottom left of the page. All right, here's my blending stump to sort of blend it all in. Now, the last thing we're going to just bring out again is the reflected light. So again, if this light is hitting the object up here on the right side, it's going to actually go past the object, bounce off the table it's on, and pop back up. So I'm actually going to add a little bit of a reflected light. Little line right there, and a little line along the edge. Sometimes your regular pencil eraser is good for this too. Okay, so there you have it. Just one or two more things about what not to do, right? So when shading, you don't want to think about it like this. Don't shade on a diagonal this way it's just gonna make your object look really, really flat, right? So you don't wanna do that. Same thing, when shading, you really wanna think about it like a windshield wiper. So don't just kinda like go dark here, and then as you come across, you're like, oh, oops, you know, and then it comes that way here. This is too thick and it's not changing directions. You really want to think about your shading going this way, and like a fan or like a windshield wiper, just notice I'm changing the direction of my line as I go down and across the object. Okay, so there's a couple of things to think about. All right, there you have it, a cone with some tonal shading. Now, just like the previous videos, I want to show you guys what these might look like using hatch marks, cross hatching, stipple, and scumble. So I'm going to do that now, and I will time lapse it and then come back at the end. All right, here we go. So there you have it, creating depth for a cone using all the different ways we're looking at for this unit. Whether you are hatching it with one-directional lines or cross-hatching it with multiple directional lines, whether you're just blending it using a pencil and some either a stump or your finger, whether you're stippling it by just creating a series of dots and more condensed dots in darker areas, or whether you're scumbling it, which is just kind of making different marks, layering your marks in the darker areas. Each way is a very viable way of creating three-dimensional objects. All right, so that's it for this edition. In our next video, we'll go over the final simple form that we'll be looking at, a cube. stay tuned for that. Thank you.